What if I told you there's a conversation most men avoid, but it could actually deepen your intimacy and connection more than anything else? Hello, my friends. Men like you and me. We often define ourselves by strength and vigor, especially when it comes to certain aspects of our bodies. But there's an untold truth about aging that affects many of us, and our partners, in ways we might not expect. Most men don't realize that just like any other part of the body, the penis also changes with age. It can sound surprising, even taboo, to discuss. Yet, avoiding this topic can lead to insecurity, frustration, and confusion. What if embracing these natural changes isn't the end of pleasure or intimacy, but actually a doorway to something far more profound and satisfying? There's a beautiful story I heard recently from a woman named Helen about her journey with her husband as they navigated these very changes. Helen shared how, in their younger years, intimacy was tied to physical vigor, intense and exciting, as it often is in youth. But as the years passed, their bodies began to change, and so did their way of relating in bed. The first noticeable shift, she recalled, was a decrease in firmness during her husband's erections. At first, they were both confused, hoping it was temporary, but it wasn't. Time marched on, and the erections no longer functioned as they once did, sometimes fading before intimacy could even begin. It was then that Helen started to notice a reduction in size, something that can be truly impactful for any man, or a couple, who isn't prepared for it. She remembered the first time they truly talked about it. Her husband, a man always confident, began to avoid the topic of sex, emotionally distancing himself, worried about not being able to fulfill as he once did. It was clear he felt ashamed, an emotion he had never experienced before. This broke Helen's heart, because she knew the foundation of their relationship wasn't just sex, but the deep love and connection they had built over the years. So, Helen took the time to research, wanting to understand what was happening and how she could help him feel better about himself. What she discovered was truly enlightening. A decrease in penis size with age is a completely normal phenomenon. Over time, our bodies lose some elasticity, hormone levels change, and blood flow decreases, all of which can affect size and firmness. But here's the most important lesson she learned, and one I want to share with you. These changes absolutely do not mean the end of pleasure or intimacy. This isn't just Helen's story. It's a common thread in the tapestry of men's aging. Consider John, a 6'3" father from Ohio, who shared a similar experience. He, too, noticed a gradual reduction in firmness and size. For years, he wrestled with it privately, feeling a quiet shame that chipped away at his confidence, not just in the bedroom, but in his daily life. He tried various supplements, read articles online, and even considered more drastic measures. But nothing truly changed until he shifted his perspective and, crucially, started talking to his wife. Helen, in her wisdom, decided to approach her husband one quiet evening after dinner. She sat by his side, held his hand, and told him she understood what he was going through and that he shouldn't feel ashamed. She explained that our bodies change with time, and it's normal. What truly mattered to her, she said, was not the appearance of his body, but the profound connection they shared. She wanted him to know she loved him for who he was, not for his ability to maintain an erection. In that moment, something profound shifted in their relationship. They began to focus more on emotional connection than the physical act itself. They realized that pleasure didn't have to be limited to an erection. This is a critical point, my friends. We often get caught in the trap of defining intimacy solely by performance. But true intimacy, especially as we age, is so much richer. Helen and her husband started exploring new ways of touching, communicating, and enjoying each other. They began appreciating moments of intimacy differently: long hugs, lingering kisses, and intimate foreplay that perhaps they had overlooked in their younger years. Over time, Helen's husband began to feel more secure once again. It wasn't an immediate change, but little by little, he started to accept his body as it was. Accepting these changes didn't mean they no longer had a satisfying sexual life. Quite the contrary. They discovered that sex could be more pleasurable and meaningful when focused on emotional connection and mutual pleasure, rather than meeting physical expectations tied to youth. This is where the wisdom of age truly shines. When we release the pressure to perform, we open ourselves up to a deeper, more authentic connection. One of the most important lessons they learned through this process was that intimacy isn't just about what happens between the sheets. It's about how we treat each other, how we listen and support one another. It's about being present for each other, not only in good moments but also in the challenges that aging brings. At the end of the day, what truly matters is how we make each other feel. It's true that men are often pressured by society to maintain an image of virility throughout their lives. This pressure can be overwhelming, especially when physical changes begin to manifest. However, what Helen, and what I, would like all men to know is that their worth is not measured by the size of their penis or the strength of their erections. Their true worth lies in how they love, care for, and emotionally connect with their partners. Now, with the years Helen carries, she can say with certainty that sex in old age can even be more satisfying than in youth. Maturity allows us to be more patient, more understanding, and more attentive to each other's needs. It allows us to enjoy moments without the pressure to meet a particular goal. We learn to relax and enjoy the pleasure of physical contact without worrying about external expectations. One of the deepest changes for Helen and her husband was how they viewed the body. In youth, we often obsess over physical appearance, wanting perfect bodies, toned muscles, and maximum performance. But over time, we learn to value our bodies for what they are: containers of our experiences, our memories, and our love. Helen's wrinkles tell a story, just like the changes in her husband's body. In old age, the body becomes a living map, marked by the adventures we've lived, the mistakes we've made, and the triumphs we've achieved. Instead of seeing it with disappointment or frustration, they chose to see it with gratitude. Every line and every change tells a story of resilience, love, and growth. Her husband began to adopt a new perspective on his body and masculinity. The size of his penis was no longer a symbol of his virility, but simply a part of him that had changed over time, like many other things. As he let go of society's imposed expectations, Helen noticed his confidence returning, this time from a deeper place. It was no longer superficial confidence based on physical appearance or sexual performance, but confidence rooted in accepting who he truly was, with all of his transformations. Their intimacy evolved as well. Although their sexual encounters became less frequent, they became deeper and more meaningful. Every time they touched, it was with more intention, as if they were celebrating the fact that despite the years and changes, they still found ways to love and connect. They began exploring new ways to share pleasure, without the pressure of achieving an erection or reaching orgasm. They discovered that true pleasure was in the act itself, in the feeling of being fully present with each other, free from expectations, simply enjoying the moment. One of the things Helen deeply cherishes about these years is the ability to be vulnerable with one another. They openly talked about their fears and insecurities. Her husband shared how difficult it had been for him to accept changes in his body, and how it made him feel less of a man in a world that often measures masculinity by the size and functionality of a penis. However, he also expressed how, through their relationship, he had learned that his worth did not depend on these superficial standards. Helen was honest with him too, telling him that although the physical changes were surprising at first, they had never affected her love or desire for him. If anything, their bond deepened as they navigated these changes together. They learned to communicate better, expressing what they needed from one another, not only in the bedroom but throughout their daily lives. This communication became key in keeping the spark alive, not just physically but emotionally. Over time, their focus shifted even more toward emotional intimacy. They became more aware of the importance of nurturing their emotions, caring for their souls as much as their bodies. They realized that sex is not just a physical act, but an extension of the emotional and spiritual connection they share. When that connection is strong, the pleasure they experience becomes far more profound and fulfilling than any physical performance could offer. For Helen's husband, accepting his body also opened the door to new forms of self-care. He began paying more attention to his overall health, not just sexual health, adopting a balanced diet, staying active, and practicing relaxation techniques that helped reduce stress and anxiety. These changes not only improved his physical well-being but also his emotional health, which, ironically, improved his sexual life in ways they hadn't anticipated. Stress and anxiety are often significant factors in aging sexual issues, and letting go of that pressure to perform led to a greater sense of freedom. This, in turn, allowed his body to respond more naturally during their moments of intimacy. One key aspect Helen wants to highlight is that these changes didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process, filled with ups and downs, moments of doubt, and small triumphs. There were days when her husband still felt frustrated with his body, moments where insecurity resurfaced. However, those moments became less frequent as they continued working on their relationship and embracing self-acceptance. They also learned to laugh at the situation. Humor became a great ally in de-escalating uncomfortable moments in the bedroom. If something didn't go as planned, they simply laughed, hugged, and continued enjoying the moment. They realized there was no need to take things too seriously. Life, after all, is full of imperfections, and that is what makes it beautiful. As they continue to age, their sexual relationship continues to evolve. It's no longer just about physical sex, but about a deeper connection that includes touch, kind words, and gestures of love. They came to understand that true pleasure isn't about the act itself, but about presence and the love they share. The journey through the changes in her husband's body became a lesson in acceptance, patience, and love. They learned to look beyond societal standards of beauty and performance, valuing what truly matters: the connection, intimacy, and mutual respect. Every change in his body became an opportunity for growth and exploration, deepening their relationship and helping them discover new ways to express love. Today, Helen looks back with gratitude for everything they've experienced. While youth and passionate intensity have their place, there's a beauty and serenity that only mature love can offer, a love that has withstood the test of time and emerged stronger and deeper than ever. So, for any man or couple going through these changes, my message is simple. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't fear accepting what your bodies are experiencing. Remember that aging is a natural part of life, and with the right mindset, every stage can be as pleasurable and meaningful as the one before. The size of the penis, the firmness of erections, these are just physical aspects of a much larger whole. True masculinity, true connection, and true pleasure come from the ability to love and be loved, to accept and be accepted. And that, my dear friends, has nothing to do with the size or appearance of any part of the body. It's all about the heart and soul that go into the relationship. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up with care. Try this tonight. Instead of focusing on physical expectations, focus on shared presence. Hold her hand, give a lingering kiss, or simply talk about your day, truly listening to her. Comment below if this message speaks to you, or subscribe if you want more honest truth like this. Note, disclaimer, this video is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider before making changes to your health, diet, medications, or lifestyle. This content does not diagnose, treat, or cure any condition. Results may vary.